Hey everyone, thanks for attending the Sage Digital On-Screen eTakeoff webinar today presented by Mantralogix and Sage. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us. And before I turn it over to Sage's estimating engineer, Darren Pierce, who will be demoing the product today, I want to inform you all that we will be recording today's session, which will be sent out afterwards. In an email, and also all the lines will be muted, so if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box and we will have time at the end of the webinar to answer them. So thank you all, and thanks, Darren. I will turn it over to you now.
All right, Matt, thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody for joining in today. As Matt mentioned, this is Darren Pierce with Sage, and I am the estimating engineer. What we're going to be taking a look at is eTakeoff, a digital takeoff solution that's seamlessly integrated with our Sage estimating application. Now, some of you may be using the estimating and some may not. So as we travel through this, especially when we get to our integration piece, I'll allude to some estimating things and kind of show you that integration and how we can streamline that process for you. As we jump into the application, a few things that I like to get you familiar with right out of the bat. Right off the bat anyway, is when you look at the solution, it does read PDFs in their native format. So when I look at the application here and I drill down into those clean, crisp lines, reads PDF, so when you load these up, it loads them up in a matter of seconds. The other thing that I like to allude to is the fact that it is a multi-user environment. So for some of those larger companies out there that have multiple estimators working on one project, I can have as many of you on one page at one time simultaneously, and it really makes for a very nice solution so people can collaborate on doing their takeoffs for their projects. So looking at that, and as we go through this, just so you know, I'm doing the scroll in, scroll out. I'm moving the plans around with my mouse. Everything that I'm going to be doing is going to be either on my keyboard or my mouse, just so you know. Now, let's talk a little bit about the solution itself here. You have a Microsoft ribbon up here, which exposes all of the functionality right on the toolbar. By the way, all the help is a hover away, so this is going to tell me a little bit about the product and a little bit about the function, and then also the shortcut keys that go along with that. Now, as you'd expect for most solutions, this does have area, count, length, perimeter, and some other functionalities that we'll jump into. When you're setting the scale, we of course have the scale to set in here. And by the way, if you are doing more of a metric rather than an imperial, everything that I'm going to be doing today is imperial, but of course you have the capability to do metric takeoff with this as well. So we have the capability to mix and match those two. When we look at the toolbar there, what we want to do is when we look at doing a digital takeoff solution, we want to maximize the space that we have on the monitor, all of the real estate. So what we can do is we can minimize this particular ribbon up here and work with our quick access toolbar. By the way, for those out there that like to use those shortcut keys, what we can do is we can customize any shortcut key to your specifications. If you have 10 people in your company that does estimating and uses this tool, each one of you can have your own shortcut keys that meet your needs, your specifications. So makes it one of those solutions that you can tailor to your specific needs. I'm going to open this up. I like to have this open during the demonstration. The other thing about real estate is we have panels on both sides of the solution. So if I want to go ahead and move these panels around, and by the way, when you're doing digital takeoff, I highly recommend that you have multiple monitors, at least 2 to 3. Matter of fact, working with some companies, I've even had some guys that have had up to 60-inch screens using a 60-inch TV screen. So you definitely have a great view of the plans there. But move these around wherever you want them to be, and we'll go ahead and place them back. Now, we'll get talking about a little bit about the functions that we have within these panels as we go through the presentation. So what I'd like to do is get in and start doing some basic takeoff And then as we start to grow, because what we want to do is we get familiar with the product, we want a growth path for you. We want basic concepts like area count, length, and perimeter. But then we want to give you the functionality to go beyond that and grow with the system. So as we jump into the takeoff right here, I'll go ahead and start with an area, drill in a little bit, and do a takeoff. It's very easy. I'm just going to go around the 4 points there. Now, if I want to increase my speed, what I can do is just, of course, go in and start doing a takeoff in those squares right there. I even want to increase my speed even more. Let's say that this is replicated. Well, in this case, what I may want to do is say, okay, let's copy that and just move it down here. So very efficient, very effective methodology of working with the system and navigating around the application. So we can do some multiples, we can move these around, so on and so forth. In this case, what I want to do though is I'll go ahead and erase this, because how often do you get into a situation when you're doing your takeoffs that there's curves that you have to go around, like curb and gutter, or there's a kind of rounded wall that we're working with. In a case in point here, what I'll do is I'll go around this square. I'm not trying to be too efficient or too accurate, but we definitely can be by even holding down the mouse and drilling in further if we want. And I'll move this up here to where I've completed that takeoff. Now in this case right here, what we may want to do is remove that pool area from that takeoff. So all I have to do is go around the area right here and cut that particular area out. And going around these curves, what I'm doing is just using the C key and curving it right to that line. Very easy to navigate around those corners. Now, well, we've already taken off that particular area, right? So there's going to be, this is going to represent something that we're going to be taking off. Could be the square footage of that pool, whatever it may be. I'll go ahead and right click and fill in that cutout right there with one of the traces. Now these traces is a library of traces that you develop, and we'll move from one project to the next. So in this case, we'll just go ahead and say that this is a concrete slab there and say OK. Now we fill in that cutout very efficiently, very effectively. So other things that we can do, of course, through that process is length and perimeter. We'll get into that a little bit more further in the presentation. But now that we've done this, any one of these takeoffs, just so you know, gets 4 points, 4 quantities every time. You get point, length, perimeter, and area. So every time I do that a takeoff, I'm getting those quantities automatically. But now, like I always like to say during my demonstrations, is let's kind of take that up a notch. Let's make you more efficient, more effective, because a line's not just a line, right? Or an area is not just an area. You want to put depth and or other specifications that may be associated with that particular takeoff. So as I dive in there to one of my many traces that I have over here in my library, I'm going to click on this. And I'm going to go through the process of doing a takeoff. Once again, just doing that takeoff and getting those 4 particular points over here. But what you're going to notice is, first of all, an E. That E is a signal to me that I have not completed all of the attributes for that particular takeoff. So when you're doing your takeoff, you want to put in those specifications. In this case, it's a wall. So I want to maybe enter the height of the wall. I may want to enter the stud spacing for that wall. I may even want to enter the drywall for that wall as well. So with that being said, this is an indicator, and whether I'm zoomed in or zoomed out, it's going to let me know, hey, Darren, you still got something to fill out for this particular takeoff right here. Well, great. So with that being said, what we can do is we can go over here and enter the wall height. And I can enter the wall height there. I can enter the number of sides, and I can also enter the sheetrock. Now we've got track, studs, and drywall that has been taken off with that one wall takeoff right there. Want to make it as efficient as possible for you guys to do that. Now, Here's one thing I will allude to that's going to happen a little bit further in the presentation is when we're working in our estimating solution, we want to be able to cost out every one of those particular materials, those items, labor, materials, so on and so forth. Well, with the bridge, we're going to map those specifications to variables that we have in assemblies. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the presentation here. The other thing is if you are using the capability of, or wanting the capability, let's put it that way, of using what we call work breakdown structures. For those of you familiar with our estimating, probably utilize those a lot. But if I want to break out and dissect this information later on, either on the plans or in the estimating, I can go ahead and tag these with either building or floor or whatever that may be that you utilize. Could be bid item, could be anything else. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So just to give you kind of an idea of that tagging sequence of what we're doing there. Now, we've taken off a wall. Well, if we have this replicated like we do here, let's go ahead and move this into project favorites and edit that description. Let's call that wall type A. Now we can drag and drop. So if you have that replicated here, it's going to be in the project favorites so that we can just move it out onto the plan. The other thing is we have specifications that we've pinpointed for this takeoff. I don't want to have to answer those variables, what we call variables or specifications. So now when I go through the process of doing this takeoff right here, it is already answering those questions for me. So we have a 10-foot wall, 16 stud spacing, 16-inch spacing there, the two sides, and then of course the sheetrock. Well, let's say for this wall though that changed. Well, we've got our standard there, but we can go ahead and change that if we need to. But doing that takeoff for you. Now, if you look at the solution, there's one more thing that I want to show you before we jump into doing a little bit more takeoff. It is really doing takeoff and taking advantage of the project favorites. By the way, what I did there is I used layering to show the information that I wanted to highlight here. And I'll get a little more into this. But let's say that you are working on a project that has a duplicated floor, 15 stories high, and that layout is the same on every floor, except for some maybe some changes. Well, once again, taking advantage of project favorites, what I can do is I can drag and drop this into my project favorites, and I can call this floor layout and say OK. Now when I move to that third floor right there, let's just go ahead and drag and drop that guy out there. And now I've done that entire takeoff for that floor. What's great about it though is if there are any changes that are going to be associated with that takeoff, I can go into the individual takeoffs and make those changes. I can do it very quickly. There we go. Oh, by the way, I don't want to do that. I'll undo that right there. Of course, you have an undo as you go through the system so that you can undo those mistakes or backtrack as we go through. So very easy, very quick to do those replicated takeoffs. So we've talked a little bit about doing some takeoff, some of the basic functionality. We've taken a little bit further and took advantage of what we call traces over here and what we call extensions to give us specifications for that takeoff. So a line's not just a line, an area is not just an area. It gives you the capability to put the depth, the width, or any of those other things that we may need to take off, the drywall or the stud spacing, all of that good stuff wrapped up into that. And we can make that specific to your organization. But let's take it a little bit further. What we want to do, of course, is integrate this with our cost estimating system and give you the opportunity to cost these out as you're going through the process of doing your takeoff. So case in point right here, if I look at these, we're going to call them slabs, but they could be flooring, they could be sublayers, they could be anything that you do. But in this case, during the presentation, they are going to be concrete slabs. So looking at them, what we can do is highlight this one right here, and you'll notice we've got specifications over here that we filled out for that. Well, let's say that for this particular presentation, that's going to be 4,000 psi. And by the way, notes are coming from our estimating solution. So that's how such a seamless integration that we have. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. In this case, we also, just for demonstration purposes, want to highlight a WBS code for this so that we can, on the other side in estimating, I will jump into estimating, break out this information very easily. So keep in mind, as you're going through your takeoffs, we can apply these work breakdown structures or these values as we do that. And we'll take a look at that in a moment. So we've got this slab here. Well, what we want to do is give you the opportunity to bridge the gap between our estimating software and the eTakeoff software. Now, for those of you not familiar with the application, we have items, and these items, in this case, maybe a project manager is going to be out at the site, and I want to go ahead and cost out what it's going to take for him to be on that site for 2 months and cost that out to the estimating. I'll go ahead and click on this button and just send those costs over into the estimate. These are items within our database. And when we look at these items, this could be a 48 structure, like a 49 structure like you're used to. Well, we've got a lot of reserved in there. They're filling in the blanks on that. I believe it has 50 divisions in the breakout in the end, but of course a lot of those do have some blanks in there. Or it could be a 16 division breakout. Could it be a uniformat breakout? So with our software, your database can be reflective of how you want to structure that database. But these items make up all of the pricing for labor, material, subcontract, equipment, and all of those good things wrapped up in it. When we look at that though, multiple items make up assemblies. So we call them work packages back in the day. I go back about 15 years, back to the DOS days, believe it or not. And when I look at that, what we see in these assemblies here is this. This guy right here has what we call variables or specifications, attributes if you come from the CAD world. And when we look at this, it's got area, perimeter, and wire mesh. Based upon answering those few questions or variables, we're going to generate multiple items under here, quantify all of those items and generate those to the estimate. So if you have further questions on that, definitely let us know. The focus, of course, is going to be on the digital takeoff, but I do want to give you at least a foundation or a quick explanation of the estimating solution, assemblies, and items, those types of things. But looking at these variables, they are coming from our estimating software. Well, let's take it a little step further here. Let's take this slab here and drag and drop him onto that assembly. By the way, if I was to create an assembly, this is for sample purposes, but if I was really to create one, I would use a prompt or a variable to say, how deep is your concrete? In this case, we're putting 5-inch slab in there. But you'll notice something that's happened right here. With those variables, they've been pre-filled with information. So here's from our estimating solution. Here are the specifications from the takeoff of concrete that I did. And there's the 4,000. Remember when I highlighted the 4,000 strength of concrete layer, or the PSI? So that is what's moving its way over here. So what we're doing is taking the specifications that you've entered into the takeoff and mapping them to the variables in our estimating software. And I'll tell you, it's easy to do. It's point and click. So I can drag and drop. If this link was intended to go in this square foot area, as we know it shouldn't, it's going to map that, and it will be persistent throughout every project. It's a learning tool. So once I've made that connection, until I change it, it is persistent. But let's take it back. It really should be square foot, right? So I'll drag and drop that over there, and we're good to go. So now we've made the proper mapping. The other thing is remember when I changed the WBS codes, or work breakdown structures, And really these are sort mechanisms for you to define the information in the estimate. And I'll give you kind of an example once I send this over into the estimating. But now we've got building, and as you can see, building floor. The fourth floor is right here. And then we also use the description up here as a section number as well. So it will give us the great way to report and break out those costs really any way that we want. But very quickly, let's go ahead and say, take this to the estimate and cost it out. So this is the bridge. Gives us the connectivity to the estimating software. Now, the one thing that we look at is as you're going through your day, who knows when you'll be interrupted. We probably get 1,000 phone calls. We get tons of meetings, and we get interrupted. So where do we finish off with? Well, first of all, we have a mechanism here that will hide anything that's been sent to the estimating. Great. We want that protection, that safety layer there. The other thing is, we won't let you duplicate that effort at all. If I drag and drop this on there, it's going to let me know that that's already been sent to the estimating as well. Last but not least, when we look at the review process, now we come in here and we can see that we've taken this off and sent this to the estimate. By the way, if I'm on other pages, I can drill down to that particular object that I've taken off, and it'll go right to that page. It'll highlight that for me. So how often do you get addendums? How often do you get change orders? How often do things change? By the way, the solution does have an overlay process where we can overlay the addendum or change order, the new plan set, on top of the existing one, and this system will tell you the differences between the two. We won't do that for this presentation, but let's say that this particular slab became this, for whatever reason it was. I won't change any of the other specifications, but what we want is a system that's going to allow us to very quickly update the estimating solution. So this pencil mark right here is an indicator that says, hey, this has changed. Let's make sure that we update the estimate based upon those cost changes. So with that happening, what we're looking at here, here's my original takeoff. There are the new changes there. Of course, we've got the area and the perimeter that have changed based upon that. I always want an audit trail downstream from this, so I can say changed during demo, let's say, and also make additional notes for that as well. Now I've got the audit trail that I need. When I go into the review process of these costs in our estimating, we'll be able to review them and see them. Now let's take this over into our estimating software. With that being done, now I can send those costs over. As I mentioned, it is a learning system. So as you get familiar with the system, as you get acclimated into the capabilities of what it can do, then what you can do is go another step further with your efficiency gains. As you can see, I have multiple slabs over here that I've taken off. Well, wouldn't it be great if the system would go out and find those slabs for me and allow me to take those off to my estimating? So in this case right here, I've got all of these slabs. I can right-click and drill down to it, and it'll show me which one of those slabs it is. And it'll allow me to generate those to the estimating. So very quickly, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and send these over to the estimating and cost them out. So it's going to go through the process, and just to verify, we can hide the fact that those are all gone and sent over into the estimating solution. We can go into our review mode and see that they've been sent over there as well. So just a trip into the estimating, and we'll jump over there real quick. I had created an estimate for this so that you can see all of those costs have been sent over here. I'm going to combine those so that we can see those cost breakouts, and depending upon how you build your database, it will reflect those particular categorical breakouts: labor, material, subcontract, if you will, equipment. If it's involved, built into that item, it will give you that capability to see all of that, those costs, generate those costs. The other thing is when you look at this, of course, labor productivity, labor cost per unit, so much flexibility over here that you can take advantage of. But like I said, this is really revolving around the digital takeoff, but if there's more information that we can send you on the estimating, do let us know. What we want to do is we want to look at a breakout. This is where a lot of our clients will do their review process in a tab called Assembly. Now, when we look at this, there's our project manager. We've cost him out for 2 months over there. It's going to be about $18,000. Here's all of those other assemblies that we have right there that have been taken off and generated from the digital takeoff solution. It's a seamless integration and gives us the opportunity to review the information once we get over here. So when you get in your review mode, before we get ready to send out the final numbers, we're going to see and be able to see this audit trail of pass 1. This is the reversal of pass 1. Now here's the new relevant variable answers, specifications that you've updated from those change orders, that addendum. And we've got the additional notes right here that will qualify and validate what we've done as well. So a very tight audit trail that goes along with the takeoff. The other thing that you look at here is I want to break this out. I want to dissect the information, those costs, in a manner that makes sense for me or my upstream partner. In this case, it was Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, 4, and 5 for those concrete takeoffs. But if you remember right, I had set it up so that we want to break that out by building and by floor. Okay, great. We'll make that change, and we'll be able to see that information by building 4 and floor 4. So for that one that I changed, now I can open up the information, the details underneath that. All of the reporting within our solution, our estimating solution, can use that same versatility and create these estimates, the information, and see it any way that you want. Now, last but not least, when we get in here, there's a blue isosceles triangle, we'll call it. But right here, that is an indicator that has come from outside of the estimating system. Of course, we can do quick takeoff, assembly takeoff right within the application. But this indicator says to me, Darren, this came from outside of the estimating solution. And by the way, I say outside because we don't work with just 2D, which is eTakeoff. We also bridge to Navisworks. So if anybody out there is a architect, engineer, design build, or receiving Revit files today, we integrate in the same fashion with Navisworks. So if that's something of an interest, do let us know. But when we look at this, I'm going to go ahead and have that audit trail that will take me right back to the bridge and that takeoff right there. So you have a complete audit trail back and forth, or forth and back, as you're sending it over to the estimate and then coming back over into the digital takeoff. So think about your review process. You may have questions about this particular cost in the estimate. Well, I want to come back and see where did I derive that from, just to do a checks and balance situation right there. So with that being said, that is a complete integration. Now let's take a look at some other things within the system. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to get rid of some information. Like I said, layering gives us the opportunity to see the information that we want. I only want to see the tile floors right here. So that's what we're seeing. But I actually want to get rid of those as well. A couple things to mention within the application. And I'm leading up to this. I just did that a little bit before what I'm going to show here. A couple things that you need to know. Multiple drawing pages here that you can see. When you're doing your takeoff, you may want to look at the specifications, the information, the details behind what I'm doing a takeoff on. Well, now I can go in. Let's go actually to a better example. Let's go to our detail window and say, okay, great. We've got that detailed window right there. Okay, we can see that information, drill into it, make any notations that you want to make up here, hyperlink to anything that you want to hyperlink to, so on and so forth. Now, if you wanted to do any takeoff from this particular page, we could just switch these pages around. Now, one thing I will mention, I'll pull that page over into my other screen. How often do you get into a situation where you've got multiple scales on one page? Happens a lot. With a lot of the contractors I work with, happens all the time, of course. Well, what we can do is we can get in and we can add as many scales as we want. So on one page, so let's say this is a 1.5 inch scale. And I can go in and I'll just pick one really quickly just so we can get into it. We can calibrate a scale, by the way. So if you, the known distance between 2 points, and that will validate that scale for you. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to set the border. Say OK to that. Now, everything outside of this particular scale is the original default scale that we set up for this page. Everything inside this scale is the new scale that I set up. So we can have as many scales per page. Most other systems say, oh, well, if you have that happen, we're going to have to copy that page, and then we'll name it by that scale. Pretty soon you got 5, 6 different pages with 6 different scales, and it gets kind of cumbersome. So this makes it very efficient for you. I'll go ahead and change this around real quick. So from my other screen, I just flipped that back to this screen right here. Last, what I want to end off with is doing counts. A lot of people, of course, get into these plans and they have to find objects and find, maybe in this case, we're looking at a door schedule. All of these doors that we want to go out and find them very quickly rather than manually counting, which we can do, of course. But in this situation, what I'll do is I'll say, hey, let's go out and find all of these 21s. All I have to do is encircle that, and now you can see that it's got it lighted up for me. Lots of different things that we can do within the solution here, but I'm going to go to my doors, and I'm going to say door 1. Great. We can search the entire drawing, which is what I'm going to do, or we can set up drawing areas where we only focus on specific areas within the plan set. But in this case, let's just go ahead and do the entire drawing. Now here's the nice thing about this. As you go through this and look at what we're doing there, now I can go through and start doing any type of takeoff that I may want to do. Now since I've already, I'll just kind of give you kind of an indicator there. Go out. Now we can still continue to do a takeoff. I've already taken off this page. I've hidden it, but we can go through and do any takeoff as we're waiting for that to finish up. Well, it's done. That went through and found all of the particular doors on this particular page. Now, there's some great things that we can do in here, and I'll take just a minute to kind of show you how we can really take advantage of this solution. So I've got doors, 21s. Well, what I want to do is I want to line all of these doors up very quickly so we can do a search within a search. So once you've found all of those particular items, let's validate, let's qualify those items, and then line them up the way that we need to. So in this case right here, we'll say, okay, it's 21. Go line those up for me. Now all of the 21s are ready to go and ready to be counted, which is awesome. So now what we can do is we can say, okay, all of these from here to here are not 21s, so we'll count these as door 1 and say save and continue. Now what we want to do is get the 23s or the 22s. Let's do the 22s real quick. Again, we'll minimize this search and just go for 22s, line them up. And now as they fit that particular record, that outlay right there, now we can count those as well. But we want to turn off the 23s. And I'll only do the 23s, and then we'll move on. And by the way, this is door number 2. What's behind door number 2? And say OK. Save and continue. One more, and then we'll move on. So I'll say 23. Last but not least. Go find them, line them up for me, and we're good to go. Now, what we can do is we'll call this door number 3 and say save and continue. And then we'll cancel out of that and say no. So what we've done in that situation is we've gone out and we've counted all of those doors right there. Gotten those doors all lined up and ready to go. Counted them all, they're numbered up, and if we go to our page summary right here, you'll notice door 1, 32, door 2, 31, and door 3, 30. Now here's the power of what the solution can do, because when we get into this application, how many times do we have it where those doors are going to be existing on multiple pages? So now what I can do is I can right-click and I can say search multiple drawings. So rather than just searching one drawing at a time, let's have a very powerful search mechanism that will go out and find all of those on as many pages as we want. Now in this case right here, I'm going to go ahead and just do this one. But I could pick any one number of these applicable plans pages and start the count mechanism. But in this case, I'll just do one. Well, I'll do two. We'll just do one. Say OK. Search. So once again, as it goes through the process of doing its takeoff there, those searches, it's going to go out and find those for me, and I'll let it do its thing. But once again, I could go through and do my takeoff, and we're ready to go. Now we bring up that set, and now here's the benefit of what we've done. Now I can say next, search, and it will line up all of the 21s for me. I'll say OK, save and continue. Let's uncheck the ones that we don't want. Say save and continue. Let's do the next one. Do the previous one where I have 22. Search. Now it'll line up all the 22s for me. And we're ready to go. Now keep in mind, it's already gotten it to the point where it knows that item, what it is, so it's going to count that for us. Excellent. Well, let's undo these 23s right here. Save and continue. And do the last one, search, find the 23s for me. And now we can undo, well, we've got some 23s that are sparsed out right there. It's just that one extra 26. Say save and continue and say done. Now we've gone through the process of counting off those doors as well for that plan set. And we're good to go. We can continue on moving down through the process. So a search mechanism, we call it pattern search, and then you can set a search within another search as well, and set it up so that it makes it very efficient for you to go count all of those doors. So with that being said, I think that is a great ending point. There's a lot more functionality to the software that you can take advantage of. And if you have questions, you definitely can contact Mantralogix, and they can work with you on setting up a demonstration specifically tailored to your business. So with that being said, Matt, I'll go ahead and pass it back over to you, and maybe we can open up the phone lines for any questions if there are any.
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, please, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box, and I'll get them answered. We do have two so far, Darren.
Okay.
One, do you have to have Sage estimating to use the digital eTakeoff tool?
And the answer is no. You most definitely do not. You can work this as a standalone application.
Okay. Cool. And the next question was, what is the entry-level cost for the tool, and how long is the 33% discount on for?
So the timeline for the discount is coming to an end here very shortly. It'll be the 15th is when we're going to be doing that. I think for you guys, we stretched it a little bit further. I can't remember. It was either the 15th or the 16th. So we do have a little bit of time, but that's the end time for that 33% discount.
Okay, cool. And I think, is there anything else here? I think that's about it for now. So with that being said, I'd like to thank everyone who attended our webinar, as mentioned earlier, and We will be sending the recording to everyone who did attend. And if you have any further questions, please send an email to Stan Keers, which is skeers@mantralogix.com, and he can help you further. And what I'll do as well is I'll include his email in the recording email that I'll send out to all of you. And yeah, I guess that's it. So thanks again to everyone, and thanks, Darren. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
All right, take care, all. Bye.
Have a good day, everybody.